Hi everyone! Today my guest might not be the best turtle catcher and an even worse shark wrangler. I have my sources. But he is quite the talented photojournalist. Nice to meet you, Aaron Gekoski.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming. Many people dream to give up everything and start a new life out of their comfort zone, but very few actually do it. Well, you certainly did. In 2009, you sold your model agency based in London to buy a ticket to Mozambique and a camera, with the goal to document the beauty of wildlife just like David Attenborough. Can you remember the exact turning point that made you take the plunge and drastically change your life?
It was, we did a game at Christmas with the family, and it was called the Alter Ego game, and we all sat around the Christmas tree talking about who we would be in another life. And my brother-in-law was a gangster, my mum was was a painter, my sister was an FBI detective, and I was David Attenborough. And then that kind of conversation really hit home with me. And then I was like, well, why am I spending all this time like dreaming of being someone else when I'm still in my late 20s? I can still do whatever I want to do. So then within a couple of weeks, I said, look, I need out. And I sold my agency and I went to wildlife filmmaking school in South Africa. And then kind of the rest is history. From there, I've been doing this 12 years now, and I've been very lucky to explore the world, documenting mankind's complex relationship with nature as a filmmaker and as a photographer. And for me, it was the best move I ever did. And yes, it's scary stepping out of your comfort zone. And I didn't know when I left the UK and the modeling world, and the next thing I'm shoved in the middle of Mozambique, and I'm learning how to be a diver and learning about Africa and learning about wildlife. And I mean, it was just, my mind was blown. So I think it's a good lesson. It's a good lesson for everyone, is that you live, it's a horrible cliche, but you live once. And if you have these dreams, if you want to do something a little bit different, then go and do it, go and follow those dreams. And it might just be the best thing you ever do.
Was it your first time in Africa? When you first went?
It was my first time in Africa, yeah. And I was so naive. I was so green. I was just like, oh, I'm just going to buy a camera and go and learn how to, my typical kind of British naive, kind of slightly bumbling way, that I was just going to go and document wildlife. And I didn't have a real plan. And nothing could have prepared me for life in Africa. It was a huge shock to me. It was, but like I say, it was just Africa. Everywhere you turn, there's a story, and particularly if you're interested in wildlife, then there's nowhere on the planet like Africa, like being out on the plains or going on safari. And like for any of your viewers watching it, if you ever get a chance to go there, then it will change your perspective on things.
So once you eventually arrived to Africa, you quickly realized, as you said, that reality was not quite like in the BBC documentaries, and therefore you decided to focus your work on the human-animal conflict. Today, you are an award-winning environmental photojournalist. Your work is widely published and broadcast through various medias. Have people ever recognized you while you were shooting undercover?
Yeah, I was doing a shoot in Bali last year, and I do a lot of work exposing wildlife tourism attractions. And I was in a place last year, I was documenting this hellhole, this turtle conservation center. And this guy was like, aren't you that guy who photographs wildlife tourism? So I just kind of laughed it off, I didn't, that's as long as you approach these things with a smile and you're polite, I find that you can kind of get away with anything, which might be that might be the end of me one day. You think that you're just going to be able to bumble your way along the world, and then something bad happens, and some bad things have nearly happened. But generally, I'm not. A lot of the time, the problem is your equipment. If you're there and you have big cameras and lots of lenses, you call a lot of attention to yourself. So you, as a photojournalist, you have to make a decision, like you want to go with 6 lenses and lighting and all of this, but you have to make a conscious decision in your mind about how much attention you want to draw to yourself and how important these creative decisions are to you. But yeah, overall, because my work is kind of all over the world, a lot of the time I'm not necessarily recognized, but I do have to be careful about drawing too much attention to myself.
Are there countries where you wouldn't dare go back because of pictures or articles that you have published?
In answer to your question, yes, there are places I wouldn't want to go back to. Do I think that it's realistic that I would be thrown in jail? I think it's possible. I think it's possible. Yeah. So you got to weigh that up. But I also know that like social media is such a powerful tool in the media that if anything, if I do ever get thrown in jail or anything bad happens to me, I feel like it would get a lot of attention, and you know, actually it would be counterintuitive for places to put me in jail because they're just going to draw attention to the issue that it was that I was exposing.
So what was the most life-threatening situation you've been in because of your work?
You know, I've been in places where I'm exposing gangsters who have private collections of animals, and you know that if they find out who you are, they'll kill you, and that's pretty much guaranteed. Because these places, that like a lot of these wildlife tourism attractions, they make so much money, and any negative publicity that affects their business, they're just going to try and stifle it. I did a big story about a place called Taman Safari in Indonesia. It's one of the biggest safari parks. Well, you know, I love they call it a safari park in all of Indonesia. And when we were there, we documented them punching the elephants, and they would keep nails in their hands and they would punch the elephants in the trunks. And we saw them doing this when the elephants got, you know, a bit boisterous, and they were punching them, but they concealed it. And then we walked up to the elephants. The elephants all had puncture wounds down their trunks. So then we did a story about that. That was in the global media, and you know, the guy who owns that he's a well-known, very dangerous gangster, and they're printing money. They make millions and millions of dollars a year, and if you do something to threaten that, then you'll get in trouble. So a lot of the time I'm just careful about not releasing where I am. I try not to, if I'm going on assignment, I don't tell people any more about it. I don't put it on social. I used to do live videos. I don't do that anymore. But it's all of these things. I mean, it's a small price that is worth paying, because all of these stories, they need more publicity. People need to know what's happening, particularly at wildlife tourism attractions where animals are just tortured on a daily basis. You know, you have about 1 million animals worldwide who are kept in these hellholes, and they're suffering for our entertainment. Not enough people know about the stories that are happening at these places. People don't understand that it's wrong to keep these animals in captivity, and they don't know what happens when the doors close. They don't understand that they're being kept in the wrong habitats, they're being fed the wrong diets. So I just hope that that's where photography is a very powerful tool to try and educate people about some of these issues.
Did you ever consider to stop after moments where you felt you were threatened?
Sometimes I question whether it's the right thing to be doing because of the danger, but I've never really thought about stopping.
Yeah.
I think I've had to stop a little bit because of COVID, and that's put the brakes on things a little bit. And you know what, you need it for your mental health, you need it for your physical health, because there's only so much that you can do of this type of work before it takes its toll on you.
Yeah.
So I think breaks are good. You do almost kind of get like a form of PTSD doing this kind of work when you see so much suffering. So yeah, I'll certainly continue doing this as long as I can. But also, I think it's about enjoying the good things in life as well. You can get yourself in a very negative mindset when you're covering cruelty all the time. So you actually need to have that fun as well, and you need to enjoy your life. And I was so immersed in this work, and that's all I did. I think last year or the year before, I went to like 20 odd countries around the world. You go back to back to back jobs, and then you push yourself too much, and then you kind of, you can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
But I'll be back after COVID and after things settle down. I'm still even doing some jobs here in the Philippines. Some really interesting stories. It's like a drug, you need more and more of it. When you start doing this career, you can't get enough.
Well, 11 years after your farewell to the fashion industry, you released your very first book, Animosity, which you talked about.
Yes.
Gathering daunting photos and emotional stories about what you witnessed along this decade of traveling, documenting, and photographing, often undercover. I have to say it was quite the experience for me to follow your journey, and it was definitely an eye-opener. I don't think many people know how cruel mankind can be to wildlife, especially just for entertainment. How has making this book and experiencing these scenes secondhand affected your way of looking at humans?
Oh, it certainly made me more cynical. It's made me angry. It's like I was just saying, you can get in quite a negative mindset when all you're doing is you're concentrating on the cruelty of mankind. And I have seen the very worst of humanity, but I've also seen the very best of humanity too. Yeah. So through my work, I document scientists, charity workers, volunteers, divers, naturalists, like people who really dedicate their lives to helping the planet. So every time I feel hope and despair when covering a story, actually you'll meet someone and they will, that'll kind of renew your faith in humanity. Because we're at a turning point in our lives, and at the moment, the way things are going, the legacy that we're going to leave to our children and our grandchildren is going to be empty jungles, it's depleted oceans that are void of coral and void of fish. And that's the legacy that we're going to leave. And I think that's terribly sad. But it's not too late to do something about it. Again, things are having a bit of a breather because of COVID, and it's allowing certain things to replenish. In some ways, it's very good for the environment and wildlife. In other ways, it's an absolute catastrophe, but we won't go into that now because I want to try and focus on the positives. So yeah, I think you just have to, in this line of work, you just have to be reminded all the time that there is good out there, and people aren't, most people anyway, they aren't intrinsically evil, or they don't want to harm animals, they don't want to do bad. Most people are just doing what they can to survive.
Sometimes I did notice in your book that you had pictures from perspectives where audiences aren't normally allowed to be. For example, like a photo of lions caged in the back of a circus bus. How do you get these photos?
Again, though, we're not ever doing anything that is, that's the mad thing, is that you would think that we snuck somewhere, like that, they were just out on show there. Oh. Like you think we were sneaking around to try and get these images. And I'm often asked this question, is like, how do you get these shots? That's the crazy thing, is that that's just open to the public. And people aren't, people don't think that there's anything wrong with it. And they're like, oh, look at those lions in a cage. Those lions live in that trailer. That's where they live. It's just, it's mind-boggling, really, about that. But yeah, again, you don't want to push it too much, because if you end up like snooping around with your camera and it's clear what you're doing. And I've ended up in some situations that are quite uncomfortable, and you could end up, you could be in trouble. So now I don't push the boundaries. I don't kind of snoop around, because I just think it's not worth it. Because if you do, you have your camera confiscated, you have your memory cards gone, you get beaten up, or worse. It's just not worth it. It's not worth pushing it too much.
Even I just assumed that it was out of the public vision?
No. It's crazy that these things are on public view.
Is there a particular story that you are proud to have highlighted in your book or in as picture or published?
Good question. Very good question. There's every story that I work on, like when you immerse yourself in a story or a subject so much, it becomes so personal. So you go and you know nothing about this issue at first, and then you go and you're just like, that's your life for a week, a month, however long it is. And then you end up feeling this real affinity towards the animal or towards the subject. And then when you produce a story on it, every different story you feel proud about in your own way. And I like to cover stories that people don't really know about. I mean, that's the kind of goal of a photojournalist. So every story that I work on, if I'm doing my job correctly and it's helping to educate people on a wider basis, then I feel proud of all of them, but for different reasons. But I feel like kind of, you know, the more unusual the story, the little, if it hasn't had that much exposure, then there's much more pride. I did a film about otters in the exotic pet trade a couple of years ago, and that was a story that's not really known about. The otters are being taken from the wild and they're being put in cafes in Tokyo, where people can go and play with cute otters like you do with cats or dogs. And again, people don't really kind of know about this, and they see videos and pictures on social media and they think how cute otters are. And then they go to these cafes to go and see them and play with them, but they don't realize that they've been taken from the wild and parents have been killed, and the otters, they do really badly in captivity. And that got really a lot of exposure, and that film actually helped to get otters. It was shown at CITES at the conference last year, and it helped to get them extra protection. So they got put on CITES Appendix 1, the 2 Asian species of otters, partly because of our film. So that's kind of, you know, it's like things like this that happen, these small victories that keep you motivated to continue with this work.
Yeah, I actually watched the otter film. It was very good. Yeah, I did. I really enjoyed it. Well, as much as I could enjoy it, because it was pretty sad. I guess you weren't able to fit all of the issues happening today in one book. So do you plan to make a sequel in the future?
I would like to, yeah. I mean, I would like to do books that focus on individual issues, maybe like one on the exotic pet trade. Yeah, there were some stories that were missing. I tried to fit as much as I could into animosity because I wanted it to be this, you know, if I get killed by some kind of Eastern European gangster next week, everyone would be like, what was that blonde dude? What did he do? And, you know, you hand one book and that's what you kind of remembered for. So I tried to fit as much into it as possible, but there were some stories that I missed out. And then, yeah, I'd like to do maybe some on, yeah, even some of the individual stories that I cover, because in a chapter, you can only have like 10, 15 pictures. But yeah, I would, yeah, at some point I'll do another. Yeah, absolutely.
I want to talk about Raise the Red Flag you created in August 2019. Can you explain what this tool is about and how it makes a difference for wildlife?
Yeah, so when I was going to all of these wildlife tourism attractions and speaking to people and investigating the industry, I found out that there wasn't a platform where people could go and make reports, or they could make their voices heard if they were to go and see abuse happening at wildlife tourism attractions around the world. So my idea was to come up with something that it was essentially a reporting system where, okay, you're in a zoo in KK, you're at Lokawi, and you see, you know, some of the shocking conditions that animals are held in Lokawi, and you take a picture and you make a report, you upload it to a platform, and then it comes up as a red flag on a global map. So it's a way that people can then research and find out whether they should be visiting these places. So I built a platform with a friend of mine, and then realized actually like this could be something that's quite a big thing, and I don't have the know-how or the skills or the desire to run a platform like that. So I approached Born Free Foundation with the idea, and I said, look, why don't you guys run the platform side of things, and then you keep sending me out on location as a photographer, and I'll keep exposing them and investigating them. I'll use my skills. Like, I'd be terrible at running a platform like that. I'm a photographer. So they said yes, they took it up, and they kind of redesigned it, and then we did a big launch last year, or the year before last, and it's had hundreds of reports on the system, which is good. We've done a lot of investigations together. We did the Taman Safari thing together. Yeah, I guess in that sense, it's kind of been a success. I wish it would maybe been a bit bigger than it is. Hopefully it's doing some kind of good. So yeah, it's all just kind of, it's one of those things that, again, you can look back on and say, I came up with that, and maybe it's helped animals, maybe it hasn't. But if your viewers are interested, it's on Born Free Foundation's website. So if you go to Raise the Red Flag, and then if anyone sees anything happening at these wildlife tourism attractions, then they can make a report through that. It's quite nice, a simple system. So yeah, it's just good that there is something that exists like that, because at the moment there is nothing.
As you've said, you've received reports from all around the world. Can you tell us exactly what happens after a report is sent? And the little red flag is put on the map.
Yeah, so after a report is sent, so then Born Free Foundation, they try and put pressure on the relevant authorities. So they have campaigns whereby they will release the details of the person who is in charge of the local area, or the mayor of the town. We did one in Morocco, in Marrakesh, for Raise the Red Flag, and hundreds and hundreds of people emailed the mayor of Marrakesh to try and get the performing monkey shows stopped. And it's about getting publicity, because these places, again, they don't want negative publicity. They don't want it to affect tourism. And if they see that there's negative publicity around Raise the Red Flag in the international press, then they're going to do something about it, because they don't want to look bad. And Raise the Red Flag is just one kind of small part of an overarching media strategy to raise awareness about these issues. A lot of the time, yeah, there's media hype, there's a fuss, they get a bad name, but then you need people to be going in there and busting the doors down, and that takes resources, it takes money, it takes people.
If there weren't some life-threatening or gangsters or anything involved, I would go and bust the doors down.
I can see you doing that, Julia. I can see you going there and giving them hell.
Well, I want to finish up this interview on a bit of a lighter note. You wrote in your book, and as you said earlier, you've seen the worst and the best of humanity. Can you share an example of the best?
The best, well, a lot of my work in Borneo was looking at the positive sides of conservation. So we did stories for Scuba Zoo TV, we did Borneo Jungle Diaries, we did Borneo from Below, Borneo Wildlife Warriors, and all of these people are amazing people who are living within Sabah. Benoit, what a great, fantastic character. The guy's a scuba junkie who do so much work for conservation. All the students at Danau Garang who have decided that that's what they want to do with their lives, is they want to follow their dreams. They want to be conservationists working in the jungle in Borneo and helping individual animals, from bugs to orangutans to elephants, or whatever it may be. So these are some of the stories that we covered in Scuba Zoo TV. Ultimately, you do have to have a lightness to some of it, because conservation can get very depressing. People find it they're like, oh no, I don't want to know about that, because it's sad, it's too much, particularly during these times when people have got enough to worry about. So it is always important to show the positives, to show people who are working day in, day out, to like some of the rangers at the Wildlife Rescue Unit. They're amazing people who are really working hard all over Sabah.
What drives you to keep pushing and not give up?
Individual successes, whether it's changes in policy, whether it's getting a shark fisherman to stop fishing sharks because the shark meat is poisoning their families, whether it's helping to get someone who kills dogs as a living and help them get an alternative livelihood. It's all of these small little victories that you have along the way, and you kind of take a quiet satisfaction from that. Some of your victories are just awareness, and some of them are huge, tangible victories that make a difference to people's lives. And that's what keeps me going.
Finally, I heard that Scuba Zoo is looking for a new host. Do you have any tips? Do you have any tips for me?
For you, Julia, I think you would be a fantastic host. I've already spoken to the guys at Scuba Zoo about that.
You have?
I have. I think that you're brilliant. I think that you have so much passion. I think
Thank
that you're fantastic on camera. You know, you look great. I think that you are a star in the making, and I wouldn't just say that.
Thank you.
So my tips for anyone who wants to make it in this industry is that to do what you're doing is great. Start your own, podcast, or start your own blog, or like any way that you can explore these stories on your own, and you can get a bit of a following, and you can increase your skill set. That's the best way of doing it. I'm sure you found from doing these is that, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get, the better you become on camera, the more, because interviewing is really hard, right? Interviewing is tough.
It is.
So the more that you do of it, the better you get. Practice makes perfect. And watch the people who you respect and whose work you like, and take it in, and try and you want to come up with your own style, of course, but you can always be learning from experts in the game. And there's always, whether you're watching David Attenborough or whether you're watching people who are kind of new and upcoming, you can always learn, and just increasing your knowledge, researching, putting yourself out there, not being scared of rejection, because it's also like being on camera is it's scary, it's exposing, and it gets to a point where I did it for so many years, and after a while I was like, get that camera out of my face. Like I don't want it anymore. It's the morning, I haven't slept, we've been up filming all night. Like I don't want to be on camera. I've got a spot. I like, it can be any of these things. There's a reason why there's not very many presenters out there, and very many good presenters, because it's very difficult and it's very exposing. But I think what you're doing is exactly the right way forward, and you're in the right place to be doing it, because you're in a place where there's more biodiversity than anywhere in the world. It's like you're saying about Africa, there's stories everywhere you go. So whether you want to be a photographer or a filmmaker or a TV presenter working this field, go out and find a story that you're interested in. The harder you work, the more opportunities come your way. So that would be my real piece of advice, is to go out and become an expert at what it is that you really are passionate about. For me, it's photography. I adore environmental photography. I want to be one of the best in the world at it. And, presenting, if I have to do it, then I'll do it. You do it on the sidelines. So yeah, follow what it is that you are passionate about, and do it to the very best of your abilities.
Well, you would be my inspiration, because I admire what you do. I admire your work, because it's hard for you, but you do it to help other living beings. And I want to do that.
Oh, thank you very much. And if you'd like any advice, I'm really happy to try and help you, because I do really think that you've got a very exciting career ahead of you.
Congratulations on your book, Aaron, and thank you for your time and the great awareness you are spreading through your work. Your book is very inspiring, and I definitely recommend it to anyone watching. Take care, and I hope to see you again one day.
Cheers, take care.
Bye.
Thank you for interviewing me.
Thank you for joining me. Well, that was quite the interview. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and have a wonderful Sunday. Stay safe. Bye.
would beat her, and she was overfed and she wasn't given any exercise, and she was locked in a box in darkness for 20 hours a day so that people can come and clap and laugh at them. It's immoral and it's embarrassing to us as a human race.
Actually cannot believe what I'm seeing here. These beautiful, intelligent animals who are being dressed up and humiliated and made to perform. Now, which one of these is the greater ape?
There's beatings and cruelty beyond belief and abuse that goes on behind the scenes that the tourists don't know about.
And now at the end of the show, everyone gets to pay about $15 and then they get to ride on the elephant. One of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. That tiger is on a tiny chain, just paces back and forth and then gets stuck in its chains. This is a wildlife house of horrors. It's disgusting.
The tourists come visit us for see them, looking them, but no riding on her back, no working anymore. The elephants have a good life here.